Welcome everyone to Blender Today, number 52. Here we are, and a bit later than usual, but this time is worth it because I got my pen, I got my t-shirt. Today is a grease pencil special. We have, actually we didn't plan to it, but the guys were so cool that they were actually adding features until the last minute to make the chapter more special, to the Blender Today more special. So thank you to the grease pencil team. We're gonna see so many things. Thank you everyone for the thumbs up. It means that everything is okay. Let's hope it stays that way. Let's get to it. So news. Blender 2.8 still in beta. We entered March. It's the last month of the production of Spring Open Movie project. So development, it's more like, at least on the Blender Studio, is more about making it stable. Today was so frustrating. There were so many bugs. The animators had issues with some of the characters looking weird, some OpenGL issues. Then I had some issues with the render in cycles. It was fun to say the least. No, it wasn't. But that's production, right? So one area that didn't get, it apparently keeps working really, really well, is Grease Pencil. So the 2D animation pipeline within Blender, it's now a first-class citizen, I'll call it, in the workbench. So without further ado, let's get to business. So I could go actually let's quickly go through the list of updates. So where do you find the updates? Well, you find them on Dev Talk, or you can also find them in code.blender.org. I know I say it on every episode, but it's just so people remember that this website exists, code.blender.org. There you will find the latest video from the Blender developers, and you'll find the meeting notes. So March 4th is today. And the updates, this is actually not the full list because there's been a few other things that were added after this was written. So it's, Grease Pencil we're going to mention in a little bit, but then 3D cursor rotation. Now you can actually rotate a 3D cursor. That I think I already mentioned. It's not huge, but it's still there. We talked about it last episode. There were some interesting comments regarding the 3D cursor in the comments in the YouTube section. Outliner can now duplicate collections with objects included. Yes. So if you have your collection with the objects here, you can right click and you can duplicate linked or duplicate collection. So the naming might change because duplicate linked is actually duplicate hierarchy. So it means that it makes a duplicate, like, when you duplicate an object, like if you search for duplicate linked, it makes a duplicate and it reuses the same the data block. So it's around the same concept. But duplicate collection actually makes a copy of it still uses the same. Like it's a copy of the actual object. So that is the difference. But it's really handy because it means that when you have a huge collection and you just want to have like a copy of whatever you're working on, but just maybe want to make local one of the objects but still keep the collection, then that way you just make a duplicate linked and you will see that basically the objects are sharing the same data block as the original object. So another one, object visibility can be animated again. Yes, that's something that people were asking a lot. So actually I haven't even tried it yet, but apparently it's a thing. Interesting. Armature wireframe. So last week was all about wireframes, like all the new things, all the goodies in the wireframe mode in Blender 2.8. So this week, during the week, was time for the other objects to join the party. So one of them is Grease Pencil that I'm going to mention in a little bit. But they went overboard with it. They just skipped. They added a bunch of other features that were not there. So the Armature was the only object remaining that was kind of in a strange place because the armatures had like an option for transparent bones where when you are like in pose mode or in edit mode, but it wasn't really wireframes, but now it is. So for example, if you have a bunch of objects here, you will see that when you switch to wireframe mode, the Armature is actually wireframe, which it wasn't the case before. It would look still solid. So the wireframe now is respected, but when you are in post mode, for example, if you press the shortcut like Shift C for like X-ray, the X-ray will actually show the transparent version of the bones. So you can have, for example, 2 bones, one inside of the other, but you still see the actual solid view, which is the one that actually allows you to see the color, so you can tell to which bone group it belongs, or if it has an IK or any kind of constraint here. So that's why it remains solid but still half transparent, so super fancy. That is the X-ray for bones, for armatures. So what else? The outline is shown in wireframe mode when you are in object mode. That's something to remind. So if you don't find it, it's because it's in object mode. Because when you're animated, you actually need a different kind of view. You need the colors, like I mentioned, for the bone groups. So that's why it's slightly different. And another, gonna go back to this when I'm showing the grease pencil stuff. So I need to get into the grease pencil mode. So let's continue with the other ones. Texture paint bleeding was improved. That was today, actually. I haven't tested it yet, but apparently when you are painting textures, you will have like the spiky artifacts, basically. So like pointy, like texture going crazy in some around the edges. So now that has been fixed. And this one of my favorites, which maybe it's super boring. No, what do you mean? No, I hear cheers. Maybe it's super boring for some because opening files is now faster. But I really love it because I spend so much time opening blend files, and everybody spends time opening blend files, especially when you're in production, when you have a like a file that is actually linking a bunch of places. It can take time, and sometimes if you had a crash, or if you're in the render farm, for example, and you have to open, you have to render, for example, 1 frame per node. For example, if you have many computers, then every time you open Blender, you're spending render time basically on a render farm. But now it got up to 18% faster, so almost 20% in production files, not in a cube or a bunch of monkeys. In production files from the Spring Open Movie project, which are files I already mentioned. The ones I'm working on, actually this one I think it was done on the one of the shots that I'm working on, which had like 34,000 objects. It was around 500 megs. The rest is all linked data and stuff. So imagine if a file that big got improved by that size, then everything else gets improved. So really happy about that one. Look at the team of people that are contributing weekly reports. That's crazy. That's thanks to the development fund. Really. Like, it wasn't like, compare this list before, it wasn't like that. So when people are concerned about where is the money going for the development fund, well, it's part of it is being funded for like Clement, for Evie staff, Breck, Campbell, pretty much everyone that you can see on this list. They're working on especially on the bug reports, testing the bugs, the bug reports, just to see that everything is under control. So, or is like an actual real bug that it hasn't been solved before, and assigning to other people. So maintenance maybe, mainly. Let's continue. Nazdrovia, yes, let's move on. This is all that I have for here. I have a few other, oh yeah, render. This is not here in the list. I should add it. I'm not gonna add it now, but metadata. The information that is attached to your renders, to your image files basically. But when you're rendering, Blender can have, since already many years, can save specific data attached to the image. So when you are rendering, you'll have the metadata here in the output output section. You can set which settings to output. You can add nodes, you can burn it into the image so you can actually display them on the image itself. But otherwise, if you don't burn it, the data is still there. It's part of the image. And until now, you could only see the metadata in the image editor for images that were already rendered. So if an image was rendered already and like saved in your hard drive, then you would put it hard drive. That's very old, right? Or in your disk, then it would show up. But if you just render something, it wouldn't show up, and that's not very efficient. So now, thanks to our very own Sergey, now we have, for example, I'm gonna render this, and since I am in the image editor, I can do view, show metadata, and it will show me the metadata that even if the file is not rendered, which is very handy because sometimes you don't have, like, you just press F12 and you want to see what you just rendered, right? How long it took, or even better, since today this the specific render time stats have been added to this metadata, which is awesome. Why? Because it will tell you how long it took to synchronize the objects, which is handy, you know, when you're synchronizing the scene, like all the objects put into memory so cycles can render them. Then what was the actual render time, like the render between the squares, how long it took for the squares to disappear, basically the little squares to move around, to dance in the render. So the synchronization time plus the render time is the total time. So you can also see the samples, which is something that somebody commented on it the other day. I don't know if it was right-click select, but they were asking for the samples to be up here in the list in the line. But I think it's even better that it's here because you can add more things, more room for activity. The metadata is also displayed here. If you can't fit it all in this view, you can also just not show it, maybe if it doesn't fit, but you will still have it here in the sidebar, in the end sidebar. So it's pretty neat. Actually, I really like this. I wonder if it's working for Eevee. No, I don't think so, because it is very specific. Yeah, render time, yes, but yeah, the samples no, because it's a different. Maybe it was never added. Actually, we're using Cycle for Spring Open Movie project, so many of these things we're using it right now, and it was just like, okay, we need it for Cycles. Okay. Does metadata overlay still react to exposure? I didn't know that was a thing. That's interesting. Okay, let's see. Let's put this always on top. Color management, exposure. No, it doesn't anymore. It's smart. Bam, AI. No, really. But it's just funny. Everything is AI nowadays. So let's move on. Do you mind if I listen to some music? Chill. Ah, that's much better. And my ears are warm. All right, let's move on. And now I look like a gamer. Okay, let's get to business with Grease Pencil. I'm gonna be using some of the files that are already available on Blender, on the Blender Cloud. They are available for free. So if you go to cloud.blender.org/gallery, you will be redirected to the art gallery, and in here you can access you will find it here in the front page. You will see Grease Pencil 2.8 beta, and here you'll see a list of awesome stuff, files by the community. This is managed by Daniel Martinez Lara, and here you can find all the files for free, for download. You don't have to register. You don't need a Blender Cloud account. You don't need a Blender Fund, anything. You just go and download it. You don't even need to be logged in. So just grab any of these files. I'm gonna play with it. So let's get to it. There is a section for Grease Pencil, which is in the splash screen. It's here, 2D animation. And let's just start drawing. There's so many things that I'm gonna forget half of them. So let's try and be quick. So there it is now in the file. I'm gonna open some of them. I think the other day I did the Mr. Elephant. I did a Dexter demo. It crashed. How interesting. I got a crash immediately. Okay, and I'm gonna open that. Let's open some Grease Pencil. maybe the Totoro blend modes. This one, that's nice. So this is a blend file that was made to demonstrate the blending modes of the new layers in Grease Pencil. So if you do overlay, or actually here regular, divide, multiply, and here you can do to apply only to the layer on top underneath. Okay, I'm gonna disable this. But what about wireframes? The wireframe mode in Grease Pencil has changed completely, because last week it was sort of like, okay, let's make it show the wires, but what does it mean really? But what about the rest of the mode? What about solid mode? What about painting the color with the strokes with different colors? Well, you can now. Let's add a couple of monkeys just for reference. So I got a monkey. So I got 3 monkeys and a Grease Pencil and a Totoro. If you change now the mode to wireframe mode, you will see that everything affects. It behaves as expected. Basically, it's a wire around the edges of your strokes. Then what if you will have object colors? So you also have per object. So for example, if I added a different, if I duplicated this Totoro and I assign a color to it, the same way I would do it for the objects in the object settings, viewport display, and then you just choose a color. Then you're basically applying a color to the whole object. So this is pretty neat. But what if you could have random colors? Well, now you can. Okay, now I am also gonna add it to these objects so we can see it. This was like the big news that broke the web last week, that you could have color custom color wireframes in objects. So now let's show all the wires. I don't like how it looks with some wires. Now you can also select random, and it will apply a random color not only to the objects but also to the Grease Pencil objects. But even better is that the Grease Pencil, it's also having its own kind of internal random, which is based on the object and on the strokes, the layers basically. So each layer is going to have its own color. So otherwise it's not going to be super interesting. And it's a special attention taken by the Grease Pencil team for the Grease Pencil objects, which I really like. I actually very like it's a very smart way, because in the objects the color is calculated based on its name, just so it's random enough, because object names are unique, so it makes sense. But in Grease Pencil they took the object name plus the layer, so that way you can have more variation inside of the same object. So the same way you have it for wireframes, you can also have solid mode, which is even nicer, because you can choose the single color for like coloring the whole object, just so you can see the silhouette. So if you're painting, if you're drawing, and if you're seeing an animation, you can actually see the silhouette. Let's see it, for example, with an actual object. For example, let's take a hero shot. For example, here. If you want to see the different characters with each one with a different, it's taking a while. Here, there you go. Oh, because he had all the characters. Okay, so so this is like the render, like the look dev version of because it was loading in look dev. That's why it was taking a bit longer. But if you have wireframe, then you will have the same kind of effect. Here you can actually see the effect of the randomness, and if she turns around, you can see that the random color, it's applied to the layers as well as the objects themselves. So you can see this one that looks a little bit like Tone, and it has a Blender logo in it. Did you know that? If you have it in the solid mode, you will see it without the effects, but you will still see the color applied per material. So you can have single color, which is amazing for silhouette. So you can, here, white. Because there is an object in the background. So if I have this, if I move this object, is this alive? Did I just break the planet? Yes, I did. Of course, Pablo. It's okay. Without the background, I can see that you can see the silhouette just for free. So just with a single setting, you can actually see the silhouette of the characters. You can see the objects, the materials. You can specify object color. So this is the same as the other regular object type. So if you are here, has anybody have seen Daniel Weiss's new work on Eevee? Yes, I have. It's amazing. So for example, this, you can have different objects with its own silhouette, and it's crazy useful. Object level, which is a mix between the object and the wireframe, so you can see it on top of it. It's just awesome. And then you have texture, which is just a regular texture. But you can see the potential here for visualizing silhouettes, animating. It's just so much more useful now this way to animate, to use Grease Pencil. So pretty amazing. Next, this was like the big thing. Then there are a few new tools in Grease Pencil. So if you, for example, have a drink, are modeling. So when you're modeling a 3D object, what do you usually use the most besides adding a cube and removing the cube? When you're in edit mode, what is one of the tools that you use the most? Extrude. Extrude is like you're born with extrude when you're using Blender. It's like the first thing you learn. And Grease Pencil now is following the same convention. So over time, when Grease Pencil was added back in the days, it was mainly about like its own thing. But over time, the effort has been put into making Grease Pencil part of Blender, becoming its own object, having its own material settings, but also similar materials to Blender, in Blender internal or cycles or Eevee, like its own thing. Then just basically try to make it its own modifiers, but they look similar to the other ones. So it's Blender, right? It's Grease Pencil. It's the same family. So now, without further ado, you can actually extrude. So if you enter edit mode, you will see that at the end of a stripe, you can just basically do E or control clicking is not enabled. Okay, because it's for drawing for deselecting. But yeah, with the E, basically you can have this effect. And there was one of the Daniel Pepeland. Blender just crashed. What am I doing? CPU 85%. Do you see me, guys? Okay. I'm still alive with you. Let's open Totoro, which we know it works. So I'm gonna remove this guy. So one of the effects that he showed is that you can extrude multiple vertices at the same time. So basically, you can just do E for extruding and we'll extrude the whole thing. So you have like a whole copy of your character extruded. And you can also extrude in different directions. You can make it go around. You can, it's a mesh basically, but Grease Pencil. So video is good, fine, everything is okay, cool. My computer is panicking. It shows 81% CPU, 35% memory. By the way, I tried to solve the memory issue not by buying more memory, but by installing a extension from Chrome, so it slips the suspends the tabs that you're not using, which is pretty handy. Actually, I installed it at work too. And if you like to keep a bunch of the Great Suspender is called. It's nothing to do with Blender, but it's almost has to do with Blender. If you like to keep the tabs open, then it will use tons of memory. So it's handy to have it. And I think you can even find it on GitHub, and you can support the guy on Patreon or something. So yeah, it's open source. So it's actually very neat. It will keep it like in the background, and then you can update it whenever you want. But at least you don't lose those precious URLs that you wanted to save and were too lazy to make a bookmark. What other tool was added? Color wireframes. Well, the annotations, they should look nicer basically now. That is, there was an issue reported that the strokes that you would do when doing annotations were not smooth enough. But now, especially when you work at fast speed, like if you're trying to draw very fast, then it wouldn't be, wow, it's really, okay, it's a bit stuck. Let's hope it survives till the end of the show, my computer. The strokes are now much more smooth compared to what they were before. So basically it has like more resolution when you're drawing, which it's really handy. Then there's a few other options, but they're not related to Grease Pencil, so I'm gonna quickly mention them. Quit prompt. In the settings of Blender 2.7 and 2.8, when you would be when you don't want Blender to ask you, hey, do you want to quit, even though you haven't saved the settings, which was weird because it was added after the fact that Blender didn't have that menu, that prompt that will tell you like, hey, do you want to save your changes? So then it was added, but since it didn't exist before, then there was a setting added to it as well. It's very interesting that it's so slow. I don't know what is it doing. So the new setting, it's the same basically. That's a similar concept, but is now called save prompt. It's not here, save and load. It's called save prompt. It's just renamed basically. Why? Because calling it quit prompt, it means it would only make sense to have it when you are quitting Blender. But what you actually want is a save prompt, to ask you if you want to save the file or not. This way you can actually introduce it in other areas. For example, if you're having a new file, if you change something, right now this is something that has to be fixed. If you change something in your file and you make a new one, Blender doesn't ask you if you want to save your changes, and that can lead to lose your data. You never lose your data because there is an autosave somewhere in your temp, but still, if people don't know about it, then it could lead to that issue. And the other one is that also when you open a file, if you made a change, if you were in the middle of a drawing session doing awesome stuff, then if you open a new file, it doesn't ask you if you want to save. So that's why it makes sense to have it as a saved prompt and put it at the end, or put it here at the bottom, in this kind of cases. Is your PC super old? It's a few years old. It's just that it's a bit too much for it to do live streams. So at some point I want to start doing live streams at work, where I have a beefy computer at least. At home I don't have a beefy computer. I have just my laptop. So it is what it is. Donations at Blender Animation Studio. What else? I think that's pretty much it. There is a new improvements with the direct selection. Now on Grease Pencil, you can now select your objects. This is a big one because it's a bit confusing at the beginning when people will draw something and then will try to select by clicking on it. And it was impossible. You will have to click in a very specific place at the the bottom or at this the center origin of the grease pencil object. So that was kind of tricky. The new way of selecting it basically gets rid of that center origin. You still have it for pivot and stuff, but now you can just directly click on the strokes on anywhere on the object themselves. So that is pretty much. Yes, I'm streaming from a laptop. Poor laptop. Yes, I know. It's not gonna survive too long. I know. Yes, it runs on my 9-year-old PC. Yeah, of course it runs. But have you tried doing a live stream? I'm using OBS NV encoder, but it's just too much to take. That is pretty much it. I think I can already move to the questions. Did any of you guys made a thread in Blender.today? By the way, there is a major upgrade to the system that runs Blender today, and right-click select and a bunch of other ones. So wow, yeah, you made one. 52 comments. Okay, for episode 52. Thank you. Nice, well thought out. Anyway, the update for right-click select is going to make it easier to find the posts. Also, it's going to make it easier for voting, because right now the voting is here and on the right side, but we plan to move it only to the right side, so people actually think before voting. People read before voting, so we want to do that as well. Look at the amazing Eevee test by Daniel Weisted. Actually, I haven't seen this one, but with the... Actually, I haven't seen this one. I've seen another. Wow, I missed it out. It was a long weekend. Let's start with the questions. I would love to see it right now, but the computer is behaving wonky. First question by Momotron 2000. Hi Pablo, and welcome to a new Blender today. Thank you. Are custom brushes planned for grease pencil? They can be PNG or GVR from GIMP or a vector file. They are actually texture brushes. They are a thing already, but I don't know about the GVR or the vector file format. But yeah, that's the status. Lapis C asks, any chance the texture node will be getting multi-layer image support? This will be useful for things like material masking. Multi-layer. I don't know about EXR. That PSD, no, because it's a Photoshop format. It's proprietary. But EXR is open source, so maybe that one could make it in. But I haven't heard any plans yet. Josefberg. Hey Pablo, please give us an update on Eevee's NPR abilities. In particular, I want to know if more shader to RGB support is planned and whether the viewport compositing is somewhere in the horizon. The more shader to RGB support is planned. What do you mean with that? By more nodes supporting that feature? I haven't seen like people requesting that a lot. It's the first time I see it since the time it was added, where there were more ideas, but it was never like really pushed more, basically. So I would say if there is a lot of people that support that, and I support it, I love NPR, and I want to after, hey, I don't have permission to vote because I'm not logged in, but the NPR abilities of Eevee are amazing, and I'm really a big supporter. I just want to stop doing photorealism in cycles and do more crazy NPR stuff. So I will be supporting it. Just make a good proposal on which nodes, where, and in an efficient way that works with the rest of Blender. And yeah, absolutely, I think it could have great support from the community. The NPR community is big, and actually NPR is one of the communities here in Blender communities. By the way, there has been requests to make the Italian Blender community and the French Blender community, among other ones. So they will be coming, but we are going to introduce a feature in Blender community that we allow you to follow communities and unfollow communities that you don't want to see. Right now you will see everything. So if we keep adding communities right now, you will see everything. So even though maybe you don't speak the language or whatever. So the idea is that you can subscribe to the communities that you prefer, and that will make it more simple. And I think it's going to be a great addition, and it will expand the community world of Blender community. Eric, hi. Any update on the request for color edges in wireframe mode? No, I haven't heard any requests at the moment. There were a few. Well, speaking of wireframes, today there was an addition that is not on the list that allows you to have wireframes a la 2.7 in edit mode. So basically removing anti-aliasing when you are in your modeling, for example, or when you're in edit mode. So it brings it's not about performance really, because performance doesn't really get that much affected, but it's mainly about the resolution, how can you tell when a line is perfectly horizontal or when it's like slightly tilt. Not having anti-aliasing, it's actually good, because you can sometimes, because that way you can tell if the line is not perfectly straight. You can disable that by checking out the viewport settings. In the quality panel, you can see edit mode, smooth wires. Hello, Blender community, so many hearts. Nice. All right, let's continue. Any update on the request? I already mentioned that. Why Blender didn't monetize its YouTube video? Is there any 3 mode coming like Maya? Why Blender size so small compared to others? Too many questions, but first, why Blender didn't monetize its YouTube videos? Because there is really no need for them. Maybe it would help, because actually, yeah, maybe it would help, but we have this policy that we don't want to introduce advertisement. Maybe if we do another kind of content, like you don't want to see an ad in front of a 3-minute Caminandes, right? I think now the advertisement in YouTube is a bit smarter, so you only show like 5 seconds videos sometimes, so maybe that's acceptable. But I wouldn't add it on some Blender content, unless maybe if it's a different kind of content, not an open movie. Maybe if it's other kind of content and it helps Blender, why not? Because it's a easy way that people can contribute. Basically, it's just, and most people use ad blockers anyway. Second question: is there any 3 mode coming like Maya? I don't know, but I don't know what it is. I'm not familiar with Maya. Why Blender size so small compared to other? Because it's made smart. I was updating OBS and it was 3 megabytes. Godot is like what, 12, 10, 20 megabytes, like super tiny, and it's a game engine. OBS also super tiny, the Linux version, and well, Blender is also small. So if you do things right, you can keep sizes small. Matt Yavan, hey Pablo, is there any support for importing PSD files in Blender? I think there is a add-on, and if you're on Windows, it's only for Windows, that I think you can do it. You can import the PSD. There was, at least for 2.7 there was support, and I think 2.8 there should be an add-on. Hi Pablo, is there any updates on everything nodes? Will it be in 2.80? No, it's not. It's for later. 2.80 is already feature complete. There might be a few things, but everything nodes is like a huge project, so don't expect it for 2.80. All the big features are in, basically. The new things is like this, like wireframe changes or like grease pencil tweaks here and there. Will we have BlendRig in 2.8? Yes, we are using BlendRig actually on the Spring Open Movie project, so we can just basically put up that version online. I think it wouldn't be an issue, but maybe, yeah, I think that should be enough. We have to check with Juan Pablo Bouza, the author, but BlendRig is open source. So why is SoftSurf still so slow? Because reasons. It needs optimizations, and there are already in the latest like last couple of days they're having improvements, and there are more improvements planned. But yes, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, trust me. The whole point of it is to get it faster, no, right? So do you have any plans about PTEC texture paint? No, I haven't. There was some plans like many years ago, but no, not anymore that I heard. I would love to. No more UVs, really awesome. Shy Moon, hi Pablo. I was wondering if these haven't been considered before. Why not making Cycles logo or Eevee? Eevee, there is no plans that I know. And why would you have a logo for Eevee? It's just Eevee is Blender. Cycles is a standalone renderer. Cycles, you can use it on Rhino or Poser, on Cinema 4D, I think. You can use it in other places. So maybe Cycles makes sense. It's a standalone, can be used without Blender even. But Eevee is Blender. So the best logo for Eevee is Blender logo, which already has like 3 tails, like, you know, when Eevee evolves, yeah, into the 3. Well, in the one in 150 there were only 3. Hello Pablo, always appreciate your live stream. Thank you. Just wanted to know if there are any plans to remedy the issue of losing the settings for object creation when clicking somewhere in the viewport. Yeah, that's procedural modeling, and that there are like the people want to work on it. There's just being so many other things going on at the moment. But I heard developers talking that it would be great it would be actually a fun project to have more procedural modeling, at least for the basics, for like a sphere, a cube. Maybe, of course, if you just modify the sphere and made it a planet, then yeah, changing the settings, it gets harder. But at least for the basic at the beginning, it should be possible, and we need more developers. Jean Da Costa says, hey Pablo, are there plans for allowing custom sculpt brushes? I think you can already, right? You can have a texture, so, and you can save the brushes, so maybe that's what you are looking for. But just look up textures in sculpt brushes. Denzil asks, firstly, thank you to the team for adding AI and PDF as import options, but I have a question. When importing SVG, I can only bring them in as meshes instead of curves, or am I missing something for importing SVG as curves? I haven't checked the most recent version, but I think you can only do as meshes. But that would be silly, because you can, once you have it as meshes, you can actually convert meshes to curves. It's in the convert, search for convert, and you should be able to do it. So maybe it should be possible to have both. Bjorn, which is a Blender Cloud subscriber, a Cloud Code Quest, and a Development Fund Bronze. Yes, all the the medals. Looking forward to Blender today. Thank you. That's very nice to hear. A small question. I saw there were some changes in RGB curves. You can imitate a color ramp with 2 RGB curves. Oh, okay. Curve right to point 0.041 and change the setting by the factor of both. However, in 2.8, when you set the first curve to show very dark results, the second one makes only. I have a hard time trying to picture what is it. Maybe I can. It really looks like if it behaves different, Blender 2.8 from 2.79b, like the latest, then you should report it, because it's a regression and it should be written somewhere that it's, if it's gonna be like that, or if there is a bug probably. So please report it with pictures to make it more fun. Hi Pablo, the IES doesn't include into blend file like external data. Yeah, it's not. I think it's more like a feature than a bug, but it could be kind of, I'm not saying you should, but maybe if you report it as a bug, the developer will be inspired and will say, this is not a bug, it's a feature. But it's been an early morning and I had a nice coffee, so maybe they feel inspired. Sometimes that happens. I do that, and I'm not proud of it, but I try to disguise bugs, feature requests as bugs. It's like, oh, this make movie button doesn't make a movie. Nerd so mad is asking, hey, as long as you're talking Grease Pencil, I would love to remind everyone that there is a Grease Pencil subreddit. It's meant to help the community and give people a place to share ideas and talk about how to empower independent animators to create Grease Pencil. I did not know that. Awesome. Is a Grease Pencil, is a Blender community on Reddit big? Because we can also just have one here. But the Blender NPR is the one for mixing Eevee and Grease Pencil. We thought about making a Grease Pencil community here, but yeah, why not? I mean, Reddit is huge, so if it's all the same person, we can just start posting on the other side. Interesting. Let's move on. I was around here. The cool thing about Blender, the community, is that you log in with your Blender ID. You don't need a Reddit account, and you can hang out with the rest. There is also a Blender chat channel for 2D. It's blender.chat/channel/2D. I should link to it. Next question, but yeah, I love Reddit. I use it all the time. You.Ninja says, hello Pablo, I reported as a bug, as you said, about remembering the values for bevel, insert, spin, but William did not accept the report, arguing that it's interactive tools. In 2.7.9 it works fine. Why you keep removing useful and working feature? Keep adding fancy but not so useful feature. This makes 2.8 unsuitable for work. I'm really disappointed in the state of our 2.8 now. Don't be disappointed, please. It's just because one person said that, just let's get more people involved. Maybe, I mean, it's just don't get disappointed. We all want the best Blender possible. It's not like there's no one that wants the worst 2.8 than 2.7 was. Blender 2.8 is just already so much better in so many areas, but in some others there are new concepts in the new features, in the tools, collections, that they have to be implemented. 2.7 had 25 years of just polishing and polishing, basically, since the rewrite in 2.5 in 2010. There are almost 10 years of polishing the tools, the system, everything. When Blender went from 2.4 to 2.5, there's a lot of people that saying, oh, the new way is so stupid. Well, it took time to get it right. The same with 2.8. Don't get disappointed. Let's try to fix it and make it the best Blender possible, because it's just a matter of keep polishing and just trying to understand the concepts and how they can work. Because yeah, in a way, the new tools are interactives, but why not just keeping the settings that we're using before? Maybe it's useful. So let's move on. Kubo. Hi Pablo, where did render time and memory preview during cycles rendering viewport hide? Second question, I could not find instancing on frames. No, actually that has been removed. The instancing on frames has been removed. It wasn't really reliable. It wasn't also render farm proof 100% of the time. So it has been removed in 2.8. The other question was, where did the render time and memory preview? They should still be there, actually. I can't check now. My computer is dying because of the live stream, but it should be there. Andres asks, hey Pablo, can you add a PBR shader to the Grease Pencil object? What? Like, my mind is blowing up. A PBR shader, how would that work? How would that work? Would I be a reflective surface? It's interesting, but it's, yeah. Next, Troy Bowen asks, hey Pablo, I was looking for the option in the object tab for duplication of frames, the same that I was explaining, that is no longer there. Maybe if more people can report it as broken, then maybe there can be ways of making it work or bringing it back, at least if it's such a high priority for 2.80, because maybe otherwise it could appear in 281, 282 with a new animation system, but it depends on how many people are using the tool, really. Lloyd Almeida says, with paint selection, the view cannot be rotated. This is a bug because it works with sculpting, painting, etc. It's not a bug. It's not a feature either. It's kind of a it's work that it needs to be done in the brush system. So hopefully in 281 there will be more, or like the paint quest somebody mentioned about, yeah, just giving some love to the brush system and the making it all more unified. But you can also just report that, like I said, maybe this guy's a feature request as a bug. Next question, 3D Dan asks, hey, selection in the viewport doesn't seem to update the blue selection overlay in the outliner. Is that an outliner setting that means suggesting work in progress? It is not a bug, it's a feature, but a confusing one. So basically the outliner has its own selection modes, basically. So you can have some objects selected. Maybe I can try and open Blender if it doesn't crash. The home stretch ended. No, the home stretch is gonna begin April, I think it's around April 8th or to 12th. Around those dates are like the tentative dates, but it could change. But basically we have to finish we have to finish spring first, and the developers that are coming, like the studio is gonna be so busy with that it can't start earlier. And also there are so many other topics in 2.8 that are being worked on right now that there is things to fix until the home stretch where people can actually get together and talk about what is going to be fixed later. Yeah, second week of April, exactly like Don Krieg is saying in the chat. So the selection that you get confused about is that if you select the camera, for example, you'll see that it's a bit slightly brighter, the camera. But you can also just like right click on an object or select it and not necessarily have it selected in the viewport, but selected in the outliner. That is because when you can right click, you can execute operations in those that are blue, that are selected. I agree that it's super confusing. I think just by changing the theme a little bit would already help to show which object is active or not. But also maybe just getting rid of the blue selection and just making everything all the time match the selection in the viewport than in the outliner. The thing is that, for example, here you can press B for selecting, and you can, without destroying your selection, you can perform operations in the outliner without changing your selection. But maybe we don't need that. Maybe it's a level of complexity that is not really that necessary. Am I right? I'm not, probably not. All right, it's almost time, so I'm gonna answer 5 more questions. Let's get to it. Tom is asking, hi Pablo, speaking of Grease Pencil, what is a favorite graphics tablet for the people running Linux? Anything really. I have, at home I have, this is a Wacom pen, an Intuos from like 5-6 years ago. It's an Intuos 5, the old that you can paint. I also have a XP pen, which is a Chinese brand. It's a display tablet, and that works just fine also on Linux. And at the office we have a newer Wacom. At Pepeland, one of the members of the Grease Pencil team, he has an animation school, and the whole school is using Huion graphics tablets. So you can see now that, yeah, they basically works with anything that you throw at it regarding tablets. So especially now 2.8 has been fixed for work better with the Huion tablets and the XP pen and all of those that are not Wacom. Thank you, Alexander, for the nice tip. Alexander Pogrebetsky. Thank you. No complexity in is good. Outliner should have its own selection. No complexity. No. What is it? Do you mean outliner is good or it's not? Because basically what I mean is that if you could just combine the selection. If you select something with the outliner, just select it in the viewport. Select something in the viewport, just 1-to-1. Right now there is the extra layer of the blue selection, which is sometimes useful but very little compared to when really, yeah, when you really need it. So Huion has some real world use to back up their claims. I heard, I don't have a Huion myself, but I talked with some of the Huion the distributors. They're actually in Amsterdam. They have a distributor here in Amsterdam, so maybe they could get together and show how they work. No, the pen is without the batteries in the latest Huions. All right. I said 5 questions more, so that was the number 4. Let's do that was number 5, the fourth one. Hello, Pablo. Could you imagine that someday Blender could get the following features? CAD tools like Fusion 360, for example. That's totally realistic. Actually, there is many versions of Blender that have been modified to be more CAD-like. So yeah, absolutely. Architects are not going anywhere. They're not going to get replaced by robots in the next few years. So there is no issue. I believe there will be CAD tools improvements in Blender. Then the possibility to create procedural textures as in Substance Designer. Yeah, that's for sure. That's in the near future. That's not like too far from now. It's part of the pipeline that Blender is lacking. And there is no real, there is no open source tool for doing that built in with the 3D software. Yeah, it's just a matter of time until it appears. And yeah. Rodrigo says, hi Pablo, did they fix the issues with selection in the collection? Sometimes the selected object didn't affect the update the viewport. There has been many fixes in that area, so you should check it out again. Just try to download the latest from today, or maybe the one tomorrow, and you should be updated. Why are primitives slow to edit after adding them? Like changing how many vertices and cylinder? Because it actually has to recalculate everything every time that you change the settings. It actually has to recalculate the whole thing. It's like adding the object again, so it's kind of silly. Yes. Which Linux distro am I using? I'm using Pop OS from System 76. It's based on Ubuntu GNOME, so yeah, similar. Let's number, what was it, 3? Will Blender be able to let us make custom buttons layout using Python? Yeah, I mean, you can already do it if you use your imagination. There are add-ons that are no, not your imagination, sorry. If you actually like right click in 2.7, you can see it. You right click, edit source, and you will see the Python of that panel of the source. So it's almost there. Wow, thank you very much again for the tip, Philip Witte, yeah, like white in Dutch, or is it German? Thank you very much for the tip. I love the show. I love to make it too. It's fun. It's nice to make Mondays less Monday, right? Okay, 2 more questions. Okay, to answer your question, custom buttons without using Python, there is a couple of add-ons that allow you to do this kind of changes. There one comes to mind is the Py menu editor. I think it's called Py menu editor, but actually you can edit all kinds of stuff. I think it's commercial, but you should be able to find the sources online because every add-on is open source, so the sources should be somewhere online. Otherwise, you should ask for them because it's part of the license. It says it's on the Blender website. Okay. Can you add the number keys, not the numlock keys, to make collections similar to make collections? Number keys to make collections. 2.7, it doesn't make, it's not for making collections, it's for moving in between the collections. I think, if I understood correctly. And last question. Also, I noticed something called face map in today's builds. Face maps are a feature that is there since a while already, but it's lacking some UI design interaction, UX en realidad. I speak in Spanish. En realidad is in reality. Because it's not about the UI. The UI is there, but it needs interaction and how to make it better. It kind of works. I don't know in the latest builds, but it used to work in the 2.7. They're also in 2.7, I think. And there is a demo on the Blender developers YouTube channel, I believe, where you can see how it works, how it's supposed to work. Basically, it would allow you to rig and to assign different faces of your mesh to a bone or a shape key, for example. So instead of moving a bone, you would assign that to a part of your mesh. So you click on the mesh and you move it, and you have a boneless rig, basically, so to speak. So yeah, all right, we reached the limit. Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Sorry for not getting to answer all of the questions. Is he from Argentina? Yes, soy de Argentina. I am from Argentina, from the south, from the Patagonia. Patagonia, very, very far away. My ears. Okay. So, did you like the episode? Did you enjoy the episode? Are you already using Grease Pencil for your own or in your own projects? Which he's Dutch, I think. No, I'm not Dutch. I'm far from Dutch. I'm too tiny for being Dutch. So this is my questions for you. If you made it to the end of the episode, my questions for you is, do you use Grease Pencil? And if so, what is the feature that you miss the most that is like a must for your workflow? So maybe cut out stuff, or like maybe it's making it work with Eevee for like shadows and depth of field, or what is it? I'm curious to know, how are you using Grease Pencil, and what you're lacking the most in there? Because there are a few developers that are super on fire nowadays working on Grease Pencil. So let's make use of them and abuse of them. No, let's make it good use of them. All right, so that is all for me. I will slowly fade away with the music that we always hear at the end of the episodes. So once again, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. I will see you again next week, same place, same time, for Blender Today 53 already. We are getting old. No, you're crying. I'm not crying. All right, the music starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I just love this. It goes with everything. All right. Thank you. Ciao. See you next week someplace.